What's good YouTube? Today we're going to be going over 5 safe classes for you guys to play for Mythic Plus in Season 3. So to kick things off, the first class I'd be looking at as a safe pick for Season 3 Mythic Plus is the Demon Hunter. I'm sure there's not much surprise here with Havoc being the most recently reworked spec, which from experience tends to cause that class to be one of the better performers. Currently they boast the best overall DPS out of any class, they have great AoE damage coupled with insane cleave damage, and to add to that their single target is very respectable too. They really do feel like a class that is perfectly balanced around Mythic Plus with their short cooldowns in Immolation Aura, Essence Break, Eye Beam, and their newest tier set giving them even more sustained damage through Soul Scar. It's also going to massively increase your hunt damage over the course of a key by giving you CDR whenever you throw a glaive, and also increasing the dot duration, accounting for a massive amount of throughput. In its current state, even if this spec does receive more nerfs, I still think it's a great pick. And outside of its damage, it still brings massive value to the group through amazing utility with Fell Eruption now baseline, a single target stun while also being able to take Chaos Nova as an AoE stop. They bring Imprison, which can be used to skip mobs without putting you in combat, and they also bring Chaos Brand, increasing magic damage in your group by 5%, which is truly insane value if you're a caster heavy comp. To add the cherry on top, they also have great defensives which are more easily accessible with the rework now through passive damage reduction, blur, and a pseudo immunity in Netherwalk. This spec really has no downsides to it going into next season, so that's why it's my first safe pick going into Season 3. The second class that I'm labeling as a safe pick going into next season is another class that's recently had a rework. It's the Rogue. Rogue has always been a powerhouse in Mythic Plus and it's only gotten stronger with the recent reworks. All 3 specs have received amazing changes, making them much stronger in a dungeon setting. Outlaw still brings amazing priority damage that passively cleaves, great for those low mob density dungeons. Outlaw's tier set gives them even more priority damage through extra sinister strikes, and then just brings an overall buff to the spec by granting you more combat enhancements from Roll the Bones. You've got Subtlety that brings amazing burst potential as well as arguably the best rogue spec for mass AoE. Sub's tier set is only going to add to their amazing AoE and burst through sometimes summoning a clone that echoes their finisher for another 70% damage. Also, just generally granting you passive combo points will really help the spec's throughput overall. And finally, you have Assassination, bringing that strong single target damage and also great spread cleave. Next here, Asa's tier set will also grant them massive priority damage through enabling Envenom in an AoE setting, while passively cleaving, which is some of the most valuable damage you can bring to a dungeon. You have an answer for every type of dungeon playing Rogue as long as you're comfortable playing all 3 specs. All of these specs now also have access to an AoE stop with AoE blind, which is something the Rogue was always lacking. They've always had amazing crowd control with a plethora of single target stops, but now to add to that they do have an AoE interrupt. Shroud is also massively valuable dependent on the dungeon. We've all seen before how impactful it can be in a perfectly optimized group. And to add to the copious amounts of utility that they do bring, rogues also decrease the target's damage dealt by 3% through their atrophic poison, making those higher keys much less scary. Rogues have been and always will be a safe pick in Mythic Plus just due to their toolkit alone, but after receiving a rework their damage is up there with the best. Our third safe pick for next season is the Druid. Balanced Druid brings some of the best sustained AoE damage in the game, as well as arguably some of the best burst single target in the game. If priority adds or mobs are spawning as a Balanced Druid, you can prepare and just delete the important mob with Star Surges. That being said though, they do tend to struggle a bit with ramp on AoE, but this is why Boomy always performs really well in higher keys, because they ramp up their damage and then it just stays that high because of their sustain. Balance's tier set means you can get back into Eclipse even quicker this tier. This 2 set isn't really that impactful, but the 4 set ramps up your damage towards the end of any Eclipse. This unfortunately does make Balance that bit rampier, but as mentioned, in higher keys Balance is going to dominate the damage meters when mobs can live long enough. Feral is similar in the fact that once they get their AoE going, they can just maintain immense spread pressure, but also now due to their new tier set, they also pump in single target. Taking Feral Frenzy and getting a 20% damage boost from using it really feeds into all types of damage profiles, but it's definitely helped out their lacking single target from previous seasons. Druids, as we know, bring countless helpful utility to the group. You bring Mark of the Wild, which is basically a flat damage reduction and damage gain for the group, super valuable if you're the only Druid too. Then their class talent tree boasts a crazy amount of value, from Incap Roar to Typhoon to Vortex, as well as Nature's Vigil for massive off-healing potential. Druids really cannot be faulted in the utility department. Both of these DPS specs are pretty tanky too, with a short defensive Embark skin, Bear Form if they're ever in huge danger, Balance is passively tanky against physical damage through the Moonkin form, and Feral has another damage reduction in Survival Instincts. Overall, the Druid is looking like a super safe pick going into next season. Coming in at number 4, we have the Evoker. We all saw how Augmentation absolutely dominated late Season 2 after its introduction, and even after the nerfs to the Spec, it's still looking to carry groups in Season 3. Aug's impact on a group is second to none. The buffs you bring not just to your DPS but also your tank and healer make keys infinitely easier, not to mention the infinite amount of utility that you bring, whether it's AoE knockups, stops, or damage reduction. They are also equipped with a cheap def, making them that much tankier. This passive has proven super strong in high Mythic Plus keys. Aug's tier set allows for more uptime on Prescience, which is slightly awkward to play around in Mythic Plus, but it does also increase your own damage as well as allows you to extend your Ebb and Might buff, which is actually very valuable. Aug really does bring it all. Devastation unfortunately gets completely overshadowed because of these reasons, but Dev has actually been super strong itself. It brings some of the best upfront bursts in the game, especially on AoE. Dev's tier set really fleshes out their damage, ramping up towards the end of your main cooldown, Dragon Rage, which is exactly what you'd want out of a tier set, just adding even more damage into those burst windows. However, this tier set also bridges the gap after your Dragon Rage windows by keeping the Emerald Trance buff, as well as granting you Essence Burst, which really smooths out the rotation. Both specs bring great utility with off heals, cleanses, the only class in the game that can dispel bleeds, and most importantly, they bring Zephyr, reducing your group's damage taken every 2 minutes. Another point to add is if we see a Havoc Rogue meta, which is looking very likely right now, then you'll likely need a Lust in that third DPS spot, which Evoker can obviously fill. All of this utility and damage contribution makes the Evoker class a solid pick going into 10.2. Last but not least, we have the Mage. Mage is generally always a safe pick for Mythic Plus because of all of the specs damage profiles, but after the rework in 10.1.5, this argument got even stronger. The class can now provide damage reduction for your whole group every 2 minutes through Mass Barrier, or even shroud your whole group to help path optimally. Mage's utility was already great and now it's just that much better. All specs can bring an AoE stop with Dragon's Breath, Blast Wave, and Frost specifically obviously permanently slows mobs, which is super useful if your tank needs the help. They bring even more utility with their Arcane Intellect buff, not only buffing the damage of any casters in the group, but also making heals more potent from the healer. They also bring Bloodlust, which like I mentioned may prove super valuable if Havoc and Rogue are meta. Fire and Arcane will blast in higher keys as mobs have to live long enough for their damage to actually shine. Fire's tier set feeds even more damage into their already very potent combustion window. This is where all of Fire's damage comes from, so beefing up this cooldown is going to make them very strong. Arcane's tier set grants you huge burst potential after stacking 3 clear casting procs. While it will be quite hard to line up with your burn phases, the damage you can pump out from those cleaving arcane missiles is going to boost your damage massively in Mythic Plus. Frost has great sustained damage too, but benefits from a burstier damage profile in those lower keys. Frost tier set gives you even more cleave when you use your Glacial Spike, causing 20% of the damage it deals to explode when it shatters a frozen target. Glacial Spike hits like an absolute truck, so this is really exciting for the spec on AoE. All specs bring amazing priority damage too, which is super valuable in Mythic Plus. And finally, if played well, mages can feel super tanky with abilities like Mirror Image, Alter Time, and Ice Block. I'd like to give a quick honorable mention to the Hunter class. Hunters are looking very strong damage-wise going into Season 3, with Beast Mastery and Survival boasting some of the best damage in the game. Survival excels in low target cleave with their massive killshot cleave, while BM is looking giga for mass AoE pulls and even single target, dependent on their build. All specs of Hunter bring great priority damage to take out those more dangerous mobs too. Beast Mastery's tier set is going to give you even more priority damage through the extra dire beasts you summon, but this will also translate to massive AoE gains as one of these beasts will be beast cleaving and kill commanding. A truly amazing set. Survival's tier set is feeding even more damage into your Fury of the Eagle windows. This is going to be insane for Mythic Plus as it has such a short cooldown, so you'll have the extra crit and crit damage for every single pack. Marksmanship's tier set has very recently been reworked. It's still going to give you volley from your rapid fires, but now the 4 set can reset the cooldown of rapid fire and cause it to fire 100% more shots. This is looking to be great on single target and AoE. Double tap is back. Hunters have unique utility that can be really useful in certain scenarios. Survival and BM have Intimidation, a short cooldown single target stun. All specs can bring Binding Shot to help the tank gain some ground or even stun mobs in a coordinated group. or you could even swap this out for another single target stop in Scattershot. Lots of people do overlook this talent choice, but in pugs especially, this is a super underrated part of the toolkit. Moving into 10.2, the Hunter also got a group buff in the form of Hunter's Mark. It's not massive utility, but it will for sure make those higher tyrannical keys easier, and over the course of Dragonflight, Hunters have become more tanky with HP buffs from Rejuvenating Wind. They also have access to Fortitude of the Bear, Survival of the Fittest, and Aspect of the Turtle. Survival can benefit from Leech for the cost of Fortitude, and all specs can use Feign Death to completely avoid some mechanics. So those are my 5 safe picks for Mythic Plus heading into Season 3. I tried to pick these specs not just based off of damage, as that can change at any moment, but more so with what they bring in terms of utility and tankiness. Let me know if you agree with the 5 safe choices, but if not, let me know what classes you'd replace. Leave a like while you're down there if you did enjoy the video, and subscribe to your boy, and until next time, I'll catch you guys later.